Alright, welcome back everyone. Katulad ng pinangako natin, magkakaroon tayo ng Volume 2 ng Marcos and Marxism or Marxism and Marcos. And today, I think masyado tayong mabayad last time. So today, I'm medyo nakatayo ako dito just in case. At may mga relaxan tayo for our guests just in case. Although, alala ko. So of course, we're joined by Secretary Ronald Llamas, aka ex-secretary, aka Pandit. Hindi daw siya totoong political analyst.
Pero wala akong nasulat ng libro.
Exactly. At kasama naman natin yung totoong naging tenured professor, pero praxis din. Kasi
Maraming naisulat na libro.
At maraming nasulat yung Google Scholar po niya in tens of thousands po yung citation. At of course, kasama niya as usual yung pretentious vlogger na mga 5 libro lang naman sinulat ng 20s. Na hindi tenured.
Pero linawin natin, hindi tenure.
Hindi tenured. Unfortunately.
Pero I would say your books have been quite influential.
Thank you, Walden. They're two coming, so don't forget to recommend it. I'm just kidding.
Oh, but I used it in my classes in New York.
Thank you so much, Walden. I really appreciate it.
So, anong natutunan ng mga estudyante?
Anong mga attack nila, sir?
Well, they wanted raw to meet him in person.
Oh, yeah.
Grabe. So, legendary ba?
At mukha, especially for Kwan.
Walden, you wanna be careful.
Baka ma-frustrate
Baka
sila.
mapunta tayo kung saan.
Ma-frustrate sila pag na-meet nila.
Kinakabahan ako dyan sa mga sagot ni Sir Walden.
Masyadong
RJ, check mo nga, baka parang na-off ata yung laptop ko dyan.
taasan yung expectations natin.
So, mag-start na tayo.
Akala ko nag-start na ba?
Start na tayo kasi nag-off yun, hindi ko alam bakit. Ayan, okay, back. Okay,
I also want to say that Ronald is really one of the foremost political analysts. I don't know who's.
No, okay, I think we should talk about this.
Somebody saying that he's not a political
No,
analyst.
ang think ko kasi is Walden. I think before, of course, today, just to signpost, we want to talk about the legacy of Congressman Esel Lagman. Of course, nakikiramay po tayo sa kanyang pamilya. So last time we had yung Dodong Nimezo. We'll do some serious discussion.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about EPCA, yung legacy ng admin niya, natitirahin natin yun. Basta ako malasado, so babago na naman ako ng position. And then we're gonna have some serious discussion about can the opposition unite? Like, what is the degree of unity we can talk about? But before that, dahil toxic masculinity yung off-the-record discussion natin ngayon, I think we have also this kind of a toxic careerism, if I can call it like that. Like this idea of credentialism, I would call it.
Oh.
Toxic credentialism. Parang sa Pilipinas, wala makita na bati architect at engineer ilalagay nila yung parang architect, like, why would you put that title? Parang German is the only other country I know na ilalagay lahat ng title. Doctor, professor, ganyan.
Bakit naman, I was proud na ako lang yung cabinet secretary sa cabinet ni Pinoy na drop out. What's bad about that?
Organic intellectual kasi sa Sir Ronald.
Sabi nga ni Gary Caminada sa kanyang kanta, di ba? Pamantasan ng puso.
Yan. Ikaw organic intellectual. Organic intellectual.
What does that mean?
It is sabihin, magaling ka mag-organize. Yun actually in Italian language. Organic, organized, they can go together. So when Gramsci said organic intellectual, he also meant intellectuals who can organize social forces.
Ang problema, namatay si Gramsci very lonely sa loob ng
Sir Ronald, I'm giving you a temple. You know, like, I'm saving you.
Pang mamatay sa kalungkutan inside the jail, di mo?
Pero tama yung sinabi, masyadong maraming emphasis sa credentials dito sa society natin. And I think na it should really be the ideas that count, no, rather than degrees. So,
But Walden, I want to ask you a question. Of course, I know I've still disappointed you for not doing my PhD in Princeton, but we'll fix that with an Hofsbridge degree. So, no, but ako lang yaman kasi Walden is, let's be honest, you're heads and above everyone else in terms of like scholarly impact internationally. And I'm not saying this to impress you. And it's not because you're a genius per se, although some would say you're a genius. It's because parang feeling ko, ang baba ng culture ng publications natin and all, di ba? What do you think is the problem? Why are we not a writing and reading country? As Ambat Ocampo, my colleague at Philippine Daily Inquirer, said, our national hero is Rizal and barely anyone reads Rizal. to be honest, I mean, like, did people reading latest Penguin Books version? Very few.
Or like our common friend, Dodong Remenso, former UP president. Wala siyang naisulat na libro. Diba? Until mamatay siya. Diba?
Yet.
Oo. May compilation ng mga short writings niya na ginagawa o nilolodge ata sa February 8. Pero yung talagang libro, katulad ng mga tenured academician.
Or is he yung tenured? Medyo,
hindi rin siya napasulat ng isang kwal.
even Randy, di ba? Did Randy David write an academic book? Parang
Wala rin.
I mean, I saw his anthology. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a compilation.
But both Dodong naman and Randy, are very
Prolific.
prolific in terms of their writings. No, kasi, and they are engaged people.
They're very engaged.
So we shouldn't measure people by books, but rather by their interventions. And I think people like Randy and Dodong, I think it's their ideas and their political interventions that have been really.
Pero hindi naman sila yung nagka-question ng credentials namin. Ang nagka-question ng credentials, yung mga nag-feeling na napakataas na academy, tapos wala pang 500 Google citation, wala pang... You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the mediocre ones.
Sabi nga
It's the mediocre ones who are like that.
Sabi nga isang common friend natin, Walden, no? Ang isang ideya na hindi nakasulat ay hindi isang ideya.
Sa ano siya? Hanash lang siya. Magtanggal na ako, medyo mahigit-itit na ang usapan.
Hindi ko na mapagkitin kung sino siya, pero...
So, no, but, well, then, okay, first of all, yes, your intellectual legacy is not defined by what you write. Our problem is people who use certain credentials to kind of try to downplay the intellectual contributions and impact of those people who are everyday doing their job. Like Ronald, every single day, kahit nasa anong sulok, he's doing 4 or 5 analyses. He's basically putting his health on the line, right? And then in your case, my goodness, you work so hard, and a lot of your books are, parang it's strictly speaking, parang interstices of activism and also intellectual academic work, right? So parang hindi ko maintindihan what's going on here. Like, is it a gatekeeping thing? Is it an insecurity thing? Because a lot of these critics so far is actually, sorry, but they're not relevant. Like, no one cares about them. They got Google citation na mataas, they don't have any social media output, they're not being interviewed, they have no policy impact whatsoever, and then ibabash nila yung mga katulad namin, or at least making some little effort, etc. Okay, magpalamig na ako. Sir, well, do you get what I'm saying? I'm just being honest about it. Sobrang toxic. Mediocre na nga kayo, toxic pa kayo.
Haba ng premise mo para sa banatan sila. Parang pang-kwan yan, pang PhD.
Hindi, dissertation yan.
Well,
Wait na tayo.
anyway, we can move ahead. But I think part of it is insecurity. But so that's my sense. Is there's an insecurity there, But I think the important thing is to understand that and not too much attention to it.
Pero affected ka ba? Paano ako kasi I enjoy being a heckler. Making fun of people in power.
Problem, Ronald,
Wala akong pretension na maging intellectual. So,
my problem kasi, Ronald, is, thank God in my own case, I build my own thing, right? So but I'm worried about the younger generation scholars. Like, for instance, the other day I saw like some of the young graduates of certain place, parang binabash ako online, and I was like, what? I don't even know this. So ang gets ko is, feeling ko, yung mga iba, parang say, don't be a Haydarian. Parang ganon yung tinuturo sa mga next. Parang medyo toxic na yan, di ba? Instead of encouraging, be a better version of Haydarian. Or like, do what Haydarian does and then do this and that. So, parang napaka-toxic na. This is not good.
that will be constant eh. There will be a lot of people attacking and praising us.
This, again, diba? The other thing is, ang dami ko nang kilala, ayaw na pumasok sa academe kasi daw napaka-toxic. Ang baba nga ng bayad, medieval pa yung wars. As Kissinger said, right? Yeah, he went out of wars. The problem with the academic world is the stakes are so low, but the fights are so vicious. No offense. But, maybe not in US. You taught in US, well, then maybe it's slightly better there. I don't know.
Kaya di ba okay yun? What doesn't destroy you will strengthen you intellectually.
I'm not sure I'm gonna be H on this. Medyo ibang intellectual line. I have a different philosophy.
But sabi ka ng lolo ko, yung puno ng mangga, pag namupo nga, binabato talaga yan. So, pag walang bumabato sa'yo, doon ka kabahan.
No, but then again, Ron, as I said, I thrive on disruption and bashing and all because I enjoy it. But I'm worried about the next generation scholars who are getting really turned off. Low productivity na yung mga academic circles natin. Napaka-toxic, napaka-credentialist. Tapos they bash pa the few people are trying to be. So like, in short, Walden, how can we encourage a new generation of scholars to be better version of me or to continue what you're doing? Ganun na lang message. Okay, okay ka na, Sir Ronald?
Pwede.
At hindi maging Ronald Diamas.
Nietzsche.
Sorry. Ganun na lang, Walden.
Definitely. I mean, I fully agree that let's not bash people because of credentials. If we must bash them, we must bash them for their politics.
Or their stupidity.
Right. Or if you're gonna
Like for instance, all those that people that going on to our friend, the late Edsel Lagman. We had a very difficult fight in Congress because the bishops and basically the so-called intellectuals of the church were really up against us all the way. And so that's why, coming back to your issue, that's the important thing is what people say rather than credentials.
And intentions, good intention. Sincerity matters. Sure. Can we talk about Edsel Lagman? I want to get your point because the last time we did essentially a memoriam to Dodong Numenso, which I think made people even more curious about a lot of folks that we have to know more about. And sana hindi lang yung hintayin pa natin for them to pass on. There's still a lot among us great people like Randy David probably you want to talk about too.
Yeah.
But going back to Edsel Lagman, can you first explain to people yung context ng debate niyo, the orange peel, and what you feel are your frustrations with the Catholic Church back in the day? Kasi ngayon, the Catholic Church, because of, they feel they're being, sidelining politically, they see the rise of, other groups na Dutertismo and do I need to name this? So there's a sense that they have to re-engage the public. And they're reaching out. So I was in Dicol just the other month and we met folks from parishes, the bishop and others. Genuine talaga, they're asking, what should we do in order to be able to help good governance? But what you're telling us, Walden, is that back in the day when you were in Congress, you had not very encouraging experiences when it comes to them. And I remember during the RH bill, you would see people in church attacking Risa Ontiveros, parang team Buhay versus team Ganon. So, exactly. Like, I remember those days, and then I'm seeing what I'm saying now. My take is more optimistic. Maybe there's an evolution. We should ask our resident Catholic Affairs analyst soon, live from Vatican. But ikaw, Walden, can you tell us, honestly, what was the context of those debates in the Irish Bill? And where did Edsel Lagman get your respect? Because you had a recent article in tribute to Edsel.
Yeah.
Can you lay it out for people, please?
Well, talagang bilib ako kay Edsel kasi I was able to work with him in 3 congresses on several major bills. The one was the extension of agrarian reform law that, of course, Edsel was heading that up, but Risa, when she was in Congress, was also one of the main sponsors of that bill. The MARCOS Victims Compensation Bill,
Right.
and this was in the 16th Congress that provided compensation from the seized Swiss accounts of Marcos. And Edsel played a very important role in that. But the most important one, ang sabi ko was the reproductive health bill.
RH bill, yeah.
The RH bill. And
Can you, again, sorry for people that are not from, because this is like 12 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So what was the RH bill? Was it the population control deal? Because the church and some of the critics tried to portray it in a certain... What are the facts of the case? What was the RH bill fundamentally about? Before I go to our resident.
Kaya tinawag siya na Team Buhay at saka Team
Exactly. So can you clear the air, Walden? What was the RH bill all about? How did it come
the RH
together?
bill was basically about women controlling their bodies. That was what it was.
So autonomy, sovereignty.
Autonomy.
Yeah.
It's a human rights issue.
It's a human rights issue, and of course, it was the right of couples to do family planning.
Right.
So this was, in other countries, this is not even controversial. Indonesia and Thailand and Vietnam, all of those countries now ahead of us, saw that it was important to do some family planning in order to be able to develop new countries.
Islamic Republic of Iran, they're very strong, yeah.
Aside from their divorce laws.
Yeah. That's true. And then, but here, we couldn't even get to first base for a long time. It was bottled up in the Committee on Population because of the church lobby. But, and Edsel would dutifully introduce it at the beginning of every Congress. But it was only in 2011 that we were able to make the breakthrough. So it was, since 1999.
Protracted talaga.
Protracted talaga, about 14 years before it was finally passed. And it was what really got me disappointed with the bishops was all of the really terrible arguments, which were false information, false news that they were bringing about. Like, for instance, there are people in Congress would speak about using condoms would help spread AIDS.
Yeah, I remember that discussion. Yeah.
It was called an abortion bill.
Yeah, did you encourage parang teenage pregnancy? May mga ganun din, immorality, mga ganun,
And that it was using a condom will be the first step on this slippery slope to abortion.
Yeah.
No, which was crazy, disconnected ideas.
Right.
But and then the church really defended these antiquated ideas.
Right.
And they tried to intimidate us. They showed up a few days before the second reading vote, which is this decisive vote. They were all in red robes with their Suketo-style caps. And out of, basically the message was that, those who vote for the RH bill are going to suffer.
Evil,
They're going to suffer politically, and they were, this was the message of that show of force of all the bishops coming in. But the important thing is the Congress of the Philippines, the representatives of the Filipino people, the majority of them, did not allow themselves to be intimidated by the antiquated ideas of the bishops,
Right.
and voted after 14 long years to pass the RH bill. And I was disappointed kasi, Ronald, that even some of our allies who are great on social justice issues,
Hesitate.
they would even tell us, we support you, but we cannot speak out. And we said, oh my God, ano ba ito? Is this bowing to Stalinist methods from the Vatican?
That's all.
So it was that sort of, that battle really totally turned me off with the Catholic hierarchy.
Ronald, can I transition to you? Because my take is, I'm not questioning the facts of your argument. Ang tanong ko is that, isn't that a snapshot that may not capture the evolution of the church? Kasi this is still a transition from the Ratzinger to the Pope Francis one. Because if you look at Pope Francis by mid-2010s, his positioning on LGBT issue, even on diverse issue, medyo parang, I won't say progressive, but a little bit less traditionalist, if I can put it. And some people would even argue, people in US, like the MAGA people, are calling him a communist pope, even, right? So I think it would be unfair to say that the Catholic Church has not also evolved since then. And some would say, well, then again, you can disagree with me. Some would say that, in fact, the defeat in RH bill and subsequent inability of the Catholic Church to shape the moral conversation during elections 2016 may have awakened them to the need to recalibrate. Now, ibang usapan if they have been awakened enough. But, Sir Ronald, am I being overly generous here? Because you know more than you deal with bishops. You were recently in Vatican also for the elevation of some of our good friends to
Not to defend the church.
Yeah, this is not apology.
Because the church is dalawa yan eh.
Right.
The institutional church and the church.
Right.
It's a 2,000-year-old institution.
Right. The oldest of
It's
its kind,
it survived dahil nga at particular moments they were able to rise above the tensions, the divisions within the institution.
Right.
No? Pero at present it's grappling with the pre-modernity, with modernity and post-modernity. No? Kaya their position is not very envious. No? At being an institution with almost 2 billion members. You can imagine,
growing.
you can imagine the composition, the factions within. You have progressives, you have conservatives who wants to bring back the Latin Mass, etc. You have popes being killed in the Middle Ages, the Borgia popes, etc. And yet they survived that. Lately, you have a pope dying, which yung iba ang sinasabi, under mysterious circumstances. Si Pope John Paul I, na very open dito sa reproductive health, very open sa maraming mga issues na hindi traditionally accepted ng mainstream church. Kaya ang tingin ko ay for now, ang tawag nila kay Pope Francis, at least si Vice President Vance at si Trump, as the Antichrist. Ibig sabihin, or a communist. Talagang threaten sila doon sa kaunting mga reforms na gusto niyang gawin. This is not to overhaul the church. Mga kaunting reforms yan eh. Kaya nga, nung dineconstruct ko yung kanyang sermon, nung nandun ako last month, ang daming hugot lines na pwede mo sabihin na self-criticism niya about the church. Yung sinabi niya na Christ was going uphill, Calgary, while his apostles are going down. From my vantage point, parang criticism yun sa mga mga institutional leaders ng church, yung sinabi niya na inconsistencies and contradictions of the human heart. Parang naririnig ko si Morris West yung sinulat niya yung Shoes of the Fisherman, na sabi ni Morris West, why did the perfect God chose such an imperfect institution to
Carry the message.
carry his message to the world? So, yun yung contradiction ng institutional church. At marami pa siyang sinabi na tingin ko ay self-criticism. We have lost sight of essences. We are preoccupied with trivialities. Parang it's a criticism of the bureaucracy of the institution of the church. We have stopped walking, and the church is about walking. It's not about standing still. Ayun, clearly, malinaw sa akin. Only yung self-criticism niya.
To go with the times.
Tapos yung kanyang conclusion was about inclusivity. While others are pushing for exclusivity. Ito yung first non-European pope, di ba? At siya ay being attacked from all sides, not only outside the church, but even inside the church. So itong mga sinasabi niya na hindi naman niya directly ina-articulate, ay tingin ko is a real criticism, self-criticism, nung institutional church na pinamumunuan niya. At tingin ko, dahil mahina na siya, matanda na, is soon to retire, ay yung possible successor na pinipili niya will be in the middle of all these battles, all these contradictions, all these, tawag niya, inconsistencies of the human heart.
Can you say that the church is in a transition phase, if I can put it that way?
Yes, but as opposed to postmodernity, in our age of social media, etc., identity issues, ay maraming mga tao ay sinusukat yung simbahan based on a different set of rules, a different set of principles. At yan ay nakaka-threaten sa isang 2,000-year-old institutions. Na kaya nga, the next conclave will be a battle between these tendencies, between these mga factions, if I may call them, Kaya nasa isang napaka-defining moment yung simbahan. Sabi ko nga, the contradictions of pre-modernity, modernity, and post-modernity ay kinakaharap nila in such a short span of time. Kaya very decisive itong mga dinadaanan ngayon ng simbahan. Both the institution as well as the lay members of the church. Huwag mo kalimutan, almost 2 billion ang member yan.
Well, 2 billion is Christians in general, I think.
Yeah,
That includes non-Catholics.
the Catholic is about 1.5.
5.5.
Yeah.
Well, then you want to call in this because obviously the Marxist tradition is like the opium of the masses and all of that. But the reality is that the religious groups are extremely influential, whether it's the evangelical groups in the United States or whether it's some of these non-Catholic denominations here in the Philippines who allegedly do bluff voting, recently had a peace rally. From a democratic progressive standpoint, what is your read of this, and where does the Catholic Church fit into that landscape?
Well, I
Comparative.
think that, if many of these evangelical groups at this point have been intervening politically, I think a great part of the reason is that they have seen that the division between the temporal and spiritual power in the Philippines has long been,
Slippery.
has long been violated by the Catholic Church. And so, in many ways, they had an example to base the fact their behavior of intervening politically. Although our Constitution says that there is a clear separation between the temporal power and the spiritual power, and nowhere was this clearer than during the battle over the RH bill, whereby the church basically came on to the arena, of the temporal power to take care of the physical welfare of the country, and pushed what was basically something that was other countries were doing, which was family planning. Not controversial, and yet they stepped in and basically tried to kill this. Thank God that we had a Congress that stood up to the church. And you're definitely right that that was a defining moment for the church, that they realized, although some still haven't realized this, because you just seen that there are these 7 senators that withdrew their sponsorship of Risa Hontiveros' comprehensive sex education bill, because again, the Catholic Church and the hierarchy have been trying to stop it. To stop sex education, this is something that people really need to have at a time of rising teenage pregnancy, because talagang, it's very important for the government to be able to provide the facilities to tell people this is what happens in sex, rather than people realizing, oh my God, so this is what happened to me, now I'm pregnant.
Or contracted the disease.
Or contracted a disease.
Especially in a very hyper-sexualized digital era.
What could be wrong with such a bill that they would threaten to retaliate against the senators? But when I looked at the names of these people, like Jinggoy and
Paragons of morality and family values.
First they say okay, then they withdraw. But I was quite disappointed that even
Sereno,
Lauren Regard, I'm not withdrew. Oh, okay. But I mean, kasi but in any case, what I'm just trying to say is that I would disagree that they've learned their lessons.
The lessons, okay.
Kasi
more skeptical,
I mean, maging neutral na lang sila. Don't start trying to kill the comprehensive sex education bill. But there have been...
You're talking about Catholic Church, but is
lalo na evangelicals yun. Lalo na the SAI, kasi yung sinasabing itong mga senators na ito ay based on fake news, based on disinformation. What they just have to do is check the bill. No? Parang si Presidente Bongbong, woke daw itong bill, marami daw mga detestable components.
Can I clarify?
Simple lang yun. Babasahin mo lang yung bill. Just, or ipabasa mo sa secretary mo.
Wait, Sir Hanan. Ang sabi nila dun sa bill daw, meron parang about masturbation for 0 to 4-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Tapos yung isang former Chief Justice said, who's not Catholic, I think evangelical. Sabi niya something like, baka ang mangyari dyan, people are gonna use remote control, then put condom, and then people will be traumatized by remote control. Then they're gonna touch themselves with class. Like, at the South Park. Like, what the heck was that?
In fairness, yung Catholic Church was not up in arms katulad ng RH.
I felt kasi there's
nandito yung mga Jesus is Lord, nandito yung evangelical. Sila yung medyo vanguard dito sa spirito. In church, medyo parang hesitant, no? Especially with a leader like Cardinal Ambo. No, hindi sila masyadong katulad nung sa RH bill dati.
Yeah.
They toned down. That's what we're saying.
Sure, but if you read the Inquirer and all of that, it's priests who are writing in. So it's
they priest.
Probably, but I'm just. In other words, I think that I'm quite skeptical
pa rin.
about this. So
Gusto ko lang banggitin,
Please, Ronald.
banggit mo kanina yung opium of the people.
Yeah,
no?
yeah.
Actually, nung sinulat yan ni Karl Marx, meron siyang mas empathic na mga description. Ang sabi niya, the sigh of the oppressed, your religion daw, the heart of a heartless world. Hindi lang siya naging popular, yung opium of the people na naging popular. Pero marami siyang mas empathic na description sa religion.
Even Nietzsche, right? Even Nietzsche said it anchors his
God is dead, sabi niya.
If you read Thus Spoke Zarathustra, he talks about that if you take away religion, then you're left with what next thing you have is fascism and nazism. But anyway, I don't want to go too much into that. Ang point ko lang is, I think people have to understand, we do have, I think, some different points of view in terms of, is the church evolving or has it evolved enough? And then the other thing is that ang dami ng ibang mga religious groups. I mean, well then, from a political sociology, because you're the tenured sociologist among three of us. But on a serious note, can you have a real democracy if religious groups who don't pay taxes, who are getting all of the advantages of having, can be so openly involved? I'm not talking about the Catholic Church per se, but we had the peace rally the other month and all of that. I mean, can you really have a real democracy if you have a situation like that, whereby each organized religious group essentially tries to flex their muscle once in a while?
Well, I think
or it's just an expression of a pluralistic democracy, to be fair.
No, I think that one of the things that I really, feel is the foundational principle of democracy is the separation of church and state. And I think that when that is threatened, then you will in fact have a situation, which could really lead to tremendous social strife.
Right.
Once religion invades the secular realm, as it is now doing in many places, including the United States.
US, yeah.
Then I think the possibility really of civil conflicts that become irreconcilable precisely because they begin to be seen as all or nothing conflicts that have been brought into the secular arena. Then I think that is a real danger at this point. That's why, to come back to my original point,
Yep.
the lesson that many of these evangelical groups, or whatever you call them at this point, the bad lesson that the Catholic Church hierarchy taught them was, in fact, that about intervention in the political arena, and nowhere was this most evident than during the RH Bill conflict. Now, that's why, for me, that was an experience that I really made me very, very, how would you call it now, quite firm. Yeah. In terms of my my attitudes towards the church. Not that I was a Catholic before.
Neo ka?
Yeah. But the important thing is what I'm just trying to say here is that very strong yung formation ko in terms of my current attitudes towards the church by my experience with the art
Studying in the
deal.
Yeah.
Pero meron guys mga very important theologians katulad ni Thomas Halleck, a Czech theologian and priest, na malaking influensya ngayon na dito sa mga debates within the church, no? Meron siyang magandang book, The Afternoon of the Church.
Right.
No? Na pinapaliwanag niya yung context ng evangelization, a centerpiece of the Catholic Church. Na sinasabi niya na how can you have evangelization without enculturation? No? Evangelization is about convincing those who are unconvinced. And you cannot just impose your values, your parang ideology, your theology on those who are trying to convince. You have to understand their culture.
Right.
No? Kaya
Life world.
Kaya ang premise niya, ang kanyang proposal is inclusivity,
Right.
which is now a major debate within the Catholic Church. No? At kung hindi natin ito gagawin, itong enculturation, ay yung ating evangelization will be just an empty shell what evangelization means. So, and this guy, this priest, this theologian is having such a wide influence in the church, especially dun sa mga non-European Catholic churches.
Right.
At tingin ko even Pope Francis is listening or reading him, no? Dahil nga the future of the church
Is in the global south.
yes.
Ang sarap talaga pag Ateneo at USC Tamabiptas taga UP yung nagtatanong. I have two related questions on this. One is more local and one is more global. One is, and I felt this was a kind of an unorthodox interpretation. When Duterte was attacking the church, one interpretation was he has the wrong intention, he's the wrong person, but you need assertion of the secular power by the Filipino president. Pinoy did it in a much more subtle democratic way. And I sense one of the continuities between Pinoy and Duterte was,
And he was
the
he was a better messenger.
is the assertion of the secular power, give unto Caesar what is his, right? Is that an over generous reading of Duterte, or at the very least, wasn't that a precedence for future Filipino presidents to also draw the line? I have the democratic mandate. Let me do my job, respect the separation of church and state. Because from Pinoy to Duterte, you saw a certain degree of continuity, at least on that point. Both of them pushed back against religious intervention. I know this has not been explored as much, but I remember this was one of the interesting discussions that came out of Duterte. No? That he's kind of like the brutal Borgia kind of prince, drawing the line and saying, Florence is Florentine.
I doubt if Duterte has any framework doon sa kanya mga criticism or nung tinawag niyang stupid ang Diyos.
No,
At nung, at nung minura niya si Pope Francis.
But he supported the Archbishop.
That was about traffic. No, yun yung but also Pinoy also supported the RH bill, no? Medyo reluctant pa siya doon sa divorce bill. Pero sabi nga isa-isa lang, no? Pero yung RH bill ay nag-flourish during his watch, no? At very religious si Pinoy, unlike us. Unlike us, no? Very religious. Kaya ibang-iba siya kay Digong, no? Digong is just bad, no? At doon siya nanggagaling. It's not about
Digong pushed for divorce.
It's not about
Digong pushed for
because he was divorcee. He was a divorcee.
yeah, but he didn't have to. Again, I'm not trying. Again,
Pero at the same time,
are you being unfair to Duterte that maybe he indeed had some?
no, he's just evil, no? Nung bumunggo siya sa pinost na yung divorce, pero at the same time,
Balance mo.
biglaan siyang umatras. No? Biglaan siyang umatras. Parang pinost lang niya, tapos, okay, atras na. Diba? So, he is the worst messenger.
False
no?
messenger.
Yeah. At hindi siya nanggagaling sa isang framework about separation. Separation of church. It was just the moment na siguro may nakabulong sa kanya at sinabi niya ganito, nung may bubulong sa kanya ng iba, atras siya. Pero,
Ang sense ko lang is that precisely because of the church's overreach doon sa RH, that allowed people like Digong, who, as I agree, that he had no framework except what would the aggrandizement of power, and he would use anything to do that, including at that time when Kalagang people were quite upset with the church because it had opposed the DJA RH bill, no? So my sense is, that it was Digong at his most opportunistic, and I wouldn't lend any credence to the fact to any claim that he was acting out of a concern for the secular realm. But he was, if we see Digong, this was the same thing all over. At first he was attacking the Americans. By the end of his term, he was basically saying, Americans stay in the Philippines. It's great that we now have AUKUS, and that,
So posturing. You're saying it was empty posturing.
definitely. But I agree, and this is that one of the places that I really was happy with Pinoy was that he made a firm stand on pushing the RH bill, and that was something that, I mean, the one thing where a good memory, because I opposed Pinoy in many other fronts, as Ronald.
A bit more than just oppose.
Yeah, but on the RH,
Yes.
that was,
My man.
and he knew the stakes there, which was the division between the secular and the religious. That basically he was making a stand, for the secular character of our democracy. So that's
So in short, you're saying you prefer the Pinoy version of reassertion of the secular realm rather than the Duterte version.
yeah.
I think that's more or less what both of you guys are saying.
No, I mean, because the Duterte version was just really, it wasn't even anything that had to do with defending democracy or the secular realm. It was just
Power play, ego trip.
an ego trip, and that it was promoting whatever he wanted to do at the moment, and so
But don't you think at some point, if this religionization of our politics reaches a certain threshold, that you may need a l'état c'est moi kind of a Sun King, strongman, or secular leader to come in and draw the line? Don't you think at some point that may be necessary? I know this is the dangerous argument I'm making, I'm implying here, but na baka the Pinoy version might be too weak at some point to make sure things are in the right place.
well, I think naman that you can have such strong enforcement of these, the religious, the realm of religion and the secular realm, without it being done in a dictatorial way. I think that can be done.
Right.
An even more strong assertion than Pinoy would make, but not dictatorial.
What is the Latin American parallel of this? Because they're Catholic countries and they have much more progressive legislations than us, including on divorce, right? I mean, even compared to our Catholic peers who are quite unique, right?
Yes.
How did their secular authorities, or for that matter, Spain and Italy and those other Catholic countries, how did their secular authorities assert the power in face of reactionary pushback by religious groups?
Well, I think in Latin America, I think that the progressive left made a very big difference there.
Right.
Because it wasn't just the liberals
Yeah.
who were already who were in an anti-clerical mode, but progressive parties on the left who came to power at various points in time. Over time, they were able to read into their constitutions and their politics the separation between the church and state. And over time, they were able to push, the institutionalization of family planning, divorce, abortion, and it's for all intents and purposes, you have countries that are now much more secular than
Yep.
say they were
A generation
a generation ago. And I think it's also following the same footsteps as in Europe,
Yeah.
whereby Italy and Spain,
And France.
traditional Catholic countries have been able to enforce this separation between the church and state, and pass divorce, abortion, and family planning laws that are basically would not have been conceivable 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
I mean, Spain,
Until Franco fell, right? Yeah, was
But
considerable. Yeah.
Italy. I mean, these are now the bastions of strong secularism,
Right.
and the Philippines could also follow that path, if just the religious groups, particularly the Catholic Church, were to really learn that you can't resist the expansion of human rights to be enjoyed by people, whatever their identity in. So I would say that the passing of the RH bill was a very important part in terms of the step in terms of the expansion of human rights in our country, and Edsel that we both knew.
Please, yeah.
And I was so happy to work with because I called him my commander in Congress. You know,
I remember those days.
and let me just say here that as I wrote recently, I was just astonished at his debating skills.
Yes.
He was like a tank that was punching holes
Yes.
almost single-handedly in the defenses of the pro.
And with the Roman statesman prose too.
Yeah, right.
Incredible, yeah.
I miss that. No? Yung magdedebate sila ni Pablo
Galing,
Garcia,
Oops, sorry.
magdedebate sila ni Crediboy Locsin, Rolly Zamora. No? Lahat sila wala na ngayon sa Congress eh. Si Walden Bello, wala na eh. Kaya
The golden era,
narinis ko yung ganung quality ng debate eh.
Yeah. And that's what the RH, the battle over RH was, that we had real debates.
Even if you disagree with what they're saying, it is meron silang intellectual rigor.
Nandun yan talaga.
At medyo tama yung grammar na
May sinasabi ka sa quote kang malit. There's another thing I want to ask in relation to this.
Gusto ko lang dagdagan yung
Please.
binanggit ni Walden tungkol kay
Edsel.
Edsel. Dahil
Please.
kasama namin siya noong 96, 97, 98 dun sa pag-campaign dun sa party list law.
Right.
Which was the real party list law then. Ngayon, bago na na-distort na yan ang mga decisions sa Supreme Court. No? Hindi mo na alam ngayon what kind of party list law yung meron tayo ngayon. Pero noong 96, 97, 98 naging bata siya, ay isa sa mga stalwarts na kasama namin was Senator Bobby Tanyada, Eta Rosales, and Edsel Lagman.
Right.
At huwag niyong kalimutan, yung dalawang kapatid ni Edsel ay very progressive na namatay
Yeah.
dahil sa EJK, extrajudicial killings.
martial law.
Si Attorney Hermon,
Yeah, 1977. And that's the
first during
one of the first disappearance.
Tapos si Popoy Lagman,
Yeah.
post sa EDSA na, namatay. So, even yung pamilya niya ay nag-sacrifice
Right.
dito sa
He has
sa
a whole
show.
show. Yeah, exactly.
So kailangan maalala ng mga tao yan. No? They may disagree with some of the positions ni Edsel, pero hindi mo matatawaran yung commitment ng kanyang pamilya. At hindi mo rin matatawaran yung kanyang mga advocacies for political reform.
Yeah, that's very important yan. I said na kay Attorney Lara Ramirez, yung app na, when I went to the wake last week, I said that your family has really paid a price.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the fact that his brother was assassinated,
Yeah.
and the other one was also gunned down at UP.
Grabe, no?
Through the way,
Grabe.
that I think these were experiences that fortified him to really fight for human rights.
And he felt he carries the burden of responsibility kasi he has to continue the legacy. I have another question, and probably we'll make even more enemies with this one. Woke ideology. What on earth really is this woke thing? Because it's now the favorite cannon fodder of the MAGA movement, illiberals, conservative factions,
Even
clerical
our
factions.
president.
And the president even using...
to attack the sex education bill.
What is
It was
this,
so woke.
What is this woke thing, Walden? Because of the three of us, you have seen the evolution of the left at the global level, not just in the Philippines. You were there in the Berkeley days of the 60s and all. Is woke ideology really an ideology? Is it a knockoff of progressive ideals? Or is it actually an antithesis of progressive ideas? Because some people will say woke is really just a bunch of liberal people who are interested in some projects of people who essentially try to focus on issues of prejudice and discrimination, but taking out the class conflict aspect altogether. And a lot of these people are concentrated in elite institutions like top universities, NGOs, etc. What is your read of this woke? Because this is what always the right-wing MAGA use to denigrate the entire left and progressive movement. Is wokeism a reflection? Is it a digression?
No,
is it a continuation? How do you see this woke thing?
I think this whole anti-woke thing is, really a matter of disinformation about what
They really stand for.
Really stand for.
Right.
Diversity, equality,
equity
and
inclusiveness.
inclusion.
Yeah.
I think these are efforts to really
Legitimately
the progressive democratic ideal extend to everyone.
Right.
And in the United States, sino shorthand na lang dyan in order to, for instance, attack institutions or programs that want to eliminate or eliminate racism. Malaki talaga yung component ng racism in this anti-woke thing.
Black Lives Matter, for instance.
Yeah.
And even sexism.
Yeah, and sexism. So, I think I would say that there's really, what they call wokeism or DEI is really an expansion of democratic rights. And of course, the right will never want that. The racists will never want that. The anti-women people will never want that. But then they try to just caricature it.
It's a strawman attack.
Yeah,
It's a strawman attack.
But the problem, I think, here, and you mentioned this, the class and identity is that.
And the cancel culture. Can I also add that?
Yeah.
The
It's
cancel.
a very reductionist
Yeah.
attack. Reducing everything to a label, to a slogan.
Yeah, I truly agree with that. But I think where the problem was in the U.S. And other countries is that many of the democratic progressive parties even forgot all about the class issue. And they just allowed this neoliberal pro-market and everything to destroy the lives of working people. And
Meaning white Americans.
white America,
Yeah,
that sort of
exactly.
thing. So they did pay attention
class conflict,
to, in fact, the importance of class in the United States until they finally realized, oh my God, the workers have deserted us now. And the workers are basically saying it's because neoliberalism and all of this policies have failed. And that made them very receptive to this wokeism. So this is it's a bit more complex than just an attack against the extension of democratic
Civil rights,
values.
and civil
that
rights
sort of
movements.
thing. If, in fact, in Europe, in the United States, the Democrats and progressives had not forgotten
Yeah.
the economic needs of the people
Exactly.
and did not allow very high levels of inequality, the 1% to be able to dominate and you would not have had the base.
And
for
working with the labor unions, grassroots movements.
Kaya nakakatawa nung ginamit siya ni President Bongbong Marcos. Because I can imagine, most Filipinos don't know what woke means.
I don't think Marcos
Nakiki-alt-right lang kasi siya kasi Trump na yung president. No, but Sir Ronald, I want to ask you on this kasi as a victim of cancel culture, which is not so effective so far. Yeah. I mean, no, me. Yes. Parang, kaya nga ang term natin sa Tagalog, pa-woke. Yung hindi genuinely really for inclusion and diversity. May mga tao na parang nina-weaponize ito to just cancel. Ay, toxic masculinity yan. Ay, ano yan, dati, ano yan, DDS yan. Because you're not on Twitter, but I see this a lot, this cancel culture, Walden, which is not really, like, shut down na the debate. Huwag na tayo mag-debate kasi ito, ano yan, toxic masculinity yan, ganun. For me, that's pa-woke. Hindi siya woke, pa-woke. That is a bit problematic in my opinion. Di ba?
Ako kasi sticks and stones.
Yeah.
Can break my bones.
Yeah.
But FB, Twitter, apps
wala kasing Twitter eh.
will never hurt me.
Okay, you never feel what I'm feeling. It's like,
Yeah. What's the question again?
No, I mean, this whole cancel culture, etc., like, the reason is because this affected also the 2022 election to a certain degree. Like, for instance, when there was an attempt to create a broader coalition with centrist forces against the unit team, right? Biglang, hindi ito pwede yan. Ito dating DDS yan. Ito si ganito yan. Ito si ganito yan. Ito si Dario, wag niya pakinggan kasi dinibate niya yung mga DDS na yan. Yung mga ganun. Like,
That's what we have to develop a more effective strategy. No? Dahil effective yan against progressives. No? Ako hindi ko sisisihin simply yung mga atake. Sisisihin ko rin yung bakit hindi natin nadepensahan yung ating mga sarili? What was lacking? So ako, mas ang hahanapin ko ay how do we confront? Because our enemies will always be imaginative, will always adjust in their attacks against us. Dapat tayo ganun din. Mabilis din tayo mag-adjust. It's like a political year, no? Yes, damaging yan sa atin. But what did we do wrong? Or what didn't we do right?
Saan tayo nagkakulang? Yeah.
Mas tungkol titignan siya. No? Yung cup half full, half empty.
Bait mo na, Sir Ronald. Parang ayaw maniwala.
Dahil pwede naman ako ng bardagulan. Pero bahagi kasi
Papunta na tayo dyan.
Bahagi kasi dyan is, what's wrong with us?
Yeah.
No? What's wrong with us? Sure.
What's wrong with us? That's a good way of putting it. Before we go and fight over ETCA and US-China thing, because I think that's where they have the most disagreement. From the same, let's say, progressive standpoint, sana, at least in my case,
Talaga?
I want to talk about this. Is the opposition genuine opposition? So hindi na DDS, SMNI, those people. Can they ever unite or get disunited? Kasi the context of my conversation with Ronald and rest, and I wanted to get your point is that, like yung January 31, punta ka sa umaga, I'm with him, and like, you know, it's all like impeach Sara, 85%. Let's agree on that. And then 15% BBM. Then I go to the next one, it's like, Martin Romualdez, worst budget ever, kasalanan mo lahat BM, and then like 10-20% impeach Sara, diba? And then Makabayan have their own thing.
Ano may nakalimutan ka?
Ano nakalimutan?
Yung malaking banner.
And then there was this, kasi 2 minutes, then there was this malaking banner, di ako nagbabody shame, si Martin Romualdez yung nasa gitna, and then konting Sara and Marcos, diba? So essentially it was an attack. And then there was another banner, and there you go. Yeah. Parang all resign, parang resign lahat. Marcos down, ganun. And then, even more interestingly, may mga DDS dyan na ex-generals and all, na parang gusto nila RevGov na. So parang, well then, a part of me says, I hope you will be still proud of me after saying this. Like, a part of me is, okay, ganun talaga, we have to be open to different discussion. I'm sure you have different take than me and all. Another part of me is saying, you know, it reminds me of Stuart Hall's term, the missed conjuncture. Like, we have a opening now to take down at least one of the bad guys to set up taking down of the other bad guy later on. But because we're so sabog and everyone doing their own thing, this will be, I'll call it a misconjuncture. I know you'll call it the Territorial strategy, but yeah, but you get what I'm saying. What is your take on this? Are you more with the like resign all na lang? Both Marcos and Duterte are equally evil. Let's just take them all down. But logistically speaking, how are we going to do that? Kasi like, you can't go. Kasi that's the narrative. Yes, I mean, parang pa-ICC yan si Duterte, Marcos, pinakamasama. Uy, Marcos, tulungan mo kami, pa-ICC natin si Duterte. Like, well, how is this gonna happen if we're gonna attack all at the same time? Like, nothing is gonna happen. It's gonna be possible. Or worse, pabaksakin lahat. RevGov. I don't know, Walden. I'm sure you're not proud of me anymore after saying this, but medyo sabog siya sa akin. I'm sorry, Walden. My take is sabog siya. But maybe you have a different take. Your take is we are a bit too much buying the Trillian strategy. Like, what is your take? You're like, sige, go na. Let's go.
I would say is that if you're talking about missed conjunctures,
Yes.
missed opportunities, a lot of missed opportunities have happened over the last 30
Absolutely.
years.
We discussed the whole EDSA 1
Yeah,
the misconjunction.
EDSA 1,
Yeah.
There was the EDSA 2,
Yeah.
there was the EDSA 3, and so I think what happened, this is just my sense, is that as we went from one misconjuncture to another, the more the progressive forces sort of became more and more fragmented.
Yeah.
You know? And I think the point that we were making last time is that this is not, it's like they say Humpty Dumpty fell on a wall and fell into different pieces. So this is not something that you can just reconstruct in one political campaign.
Yeah.
Like, no. I think the work has to be put in by the different groups, no?
Right.
To really say, okay, as Ronald said, where have we gone wrong?
Right.
What is our common ground? And I think this is where Professor Nemenso was so important, because despite all these differences among the different groups, the key thing that he was always pushing was, ano bang common ground natin?
Yeah.
Sabi ko nga, na kasi gumagawa ako ng isang article tungkol sa Bandung, and sabi ko, si Chow Enlai, yung Prime Minister ni Mao,
Yung libro nga na tungkol about him, the most perfect revolutionary.
Yeah, he
Basically, political operator.
alam niya what he wants to
The limits as well as the possibilities of a revolution.
that he knew what he wanted, but always what is the common ground that we can have at the moment, and then let's talk about it next time once we've united on that and we've gone over the obstacle. So I just was reminded reading about this, about how this was also Dodong's approach, and they had the same sense of humor for expense nung
And self-criticism.
and self-criticism. Kasi doon sa, meron na akong, there was this point where tinanong si Zhou Enlai ni Henry Kissinger, what do you think of the impact of the French Revolution?
It's too early, yeah.
And sinabi niya, it's too early to tell. And siyempre, everybody said, oh my God,
It's
it's a long view of a Chinese civilization.
Long
Pero nagbibiro lang siya. Only he meant it as a joke and a dig at the West. Naisip lang niyo with history niyo. But he said,
Sasabong din kayo, like...
yeah, but it was, ano ba tawag sa French? Double entendre. Ngayon, pag ang kasama ni Zhou Enlai, nung sinabi niya yon, si Dodong, makukuha ka agad ng joke si Dodong.
I think Zhou Enlai was also trying to question kasi parang ang fear niya was, Kissinger was implying that should be the direction of history. Is China about to go? So he was saying that...
Sinasabi,
don't
bata-bata, mga 200-300 years.
pa lang kayo.
Kami ay 8,000 years old na kami.
So actually, triple entrante.
Triple entrante, tama.
Dig din siya na you guys are barbarians. But speaking of Zhou Enlai, he negotiated the United Front with the Kuomintang against the Japanese. So he was also a great negotiator. So as the operator in the room, Sir Ronan, Aparechik. Yeah, of course.
Wrestler.
Well, whatever.
Sige na, Ron.
Sige, Sir Ronan, tagapin na natin. Maybe hindi ka political scientist, but definitely you're the best Aparechik.
Alam mo, when we joined the Aquino government, ano namin yung limits?
Yeah.
This is not a progressive socialist government.
Yeah.
Ang mahalaga rito ay i-reject nila yung corruption at pre-modernity nung Arroyo administration. Lalo na yung kandidato nung Arroyo administration. No? Meron siyang reforms na gagawin. Na agree kami, bagamat ang tingin namin kulang. Ikalawa ay bibigyan niya kami a seat on the table. Kaya nga naging kandidato si Risa ng isang mainstream party. And eventually, she won. Bago matapos yung gobyerno ni Pinoy. Pero wala kami illusions, no, about
Eyes wide open.
the ideological limits of this government, as well as the possibilities, no, na nangyari nga yung RH, na nangyari nga pinakulong nga si Arroyo, no, etc. So, may gano'n naman kaming pagtingin dun sa nangyari dyan, no, at yun na yung siguro yung pupuntahan natin mamaya, the debate over EDCA.
Yes.
No, paano
Let's talk about this. So let's go.
dati tungkol dyan.
Let's talk about this because I know you need to go and then baka makuha mo yung ilapel ko. Well then, you had many differences with President Higino and eventually you resigned from the Akman Party. Of course, there's the Mama Sapano, but in more recent years, I think, let's just say we have been not necessarily aligned on this issue of EDCA. Not because we want the Philippines to be dependent on any superpower, but I think there's a sense that that the EDCA is becoming something even worse than what was negotiated back in the day. Like yours was EDCA light, which was still not good enough for a lot of people, of course. But this EDCA looks like another EDCA. Like this is an EDCA, put big American weapons pointing at the pesky Chinese so that they don't mess with us. And the sense of some progressivists, wait. You cannot defend the West Philippine Sea by selling out the country, the whole of the mainland Luzon, or our Ilocos region. That's one take. My take, though, is like, kind of like Zhou Enlai. It's too early to say. You still need to give the Chinese some room to like think twice. Because if we have no deterrence whatsoever, unfortunately, we still don't have anyone. Then we're even more vulnerable. So for me, this is a tactical, not strategic. We all want to be not reliant on any superpower. But for some, China is a greater evil. US not necessarily. And then there's a third school of thought, which is China is maybe the greater evil on the West Philippines issue, but my goodness, Trump 2.0, good luck sa atin dyan, di ba? We don't know what the hell is going to... Some of the appointees there are crazies. They might push us to the cliff. And as we discussed a month ago, there are also isolationists, legitimate isolationists who are taking over top positions saying, abandon the Philippines. One of them argued, the guy who's going to be in charge of Southeast Asia and Pentagon said, let's do a cooperation spiral with China kung saan we'll withdraw it and everything so that the Chinese will not fight us in South China. In short, just dump the Philippines. So, having said all of those things, well then, what is your take really on how EDCA is evolving? And at the same time, what is a realistic way of keeping China at bay in the West Philippine Sea? Let me remind everyone that you coined West Philippine Sea basically, or at least your resolution, and I'm proud that I was probably your staffer back then, push for that. This is in the annals of history, including the book of Maritas We Talk on West Philippine Sea. Andun yun. As the man behind the West Philippine Sea idea, or at least the resolution in the Congress, what do you think is a realistic way forward? And what are your worries right now with Trump 2.0, with EDCA, with China, and all of that? Dito, I think magkakaroon tayo ng konting debate.
Well, I just wanted, before we left the experience on Aquino, during that time, because as Ronald was saying, if we're able to unite on an anti-corruption stand, that was the most important thing, and that was why, as the member of Akbayan in Congress, that why I supported the alliance, no. And it was.
Naalala ko pa nga by Congress when we approved that resolution. Si Walden pa yung defense against another leader of Akbayan. Naalala ko yung exactly.
Hindi na kailangan ng pangalanan ng kaibigan natin.
But it was but at the same time, ang sense ko lang kasi, and I don't want to prolong this debate. I think if you are going to have anti-corruption on as your key point,
right,
then I think you should have a situation whereby you really use it not only against your enemies, but whenever your friends become corrupt, you also have to
use it as a mirror. Mirror.
And tell them that you can't get away with this. And that was the difference that I had with the press. I don't want to rehearse.
No. Not litigate it again.
But that's the principal thing that led to my resignation from as the representative of Bayan in Congress, and my ceasing to support the Aquino administration, because I thought it was hypocritical. If you're just gonna use it against your enemies but not against your friends. Now, so that was the situation then, and I also felt that you if you're in a coalition, you should be able to criticize. This is where we can to EDCA, because I think I really was very critical of EDCA, to the point where the president, in fact, told Ronald that I was more opposition than the opposition. Remember that, Ronald?
Yeah.
And Ronald,
which is not entirely wrong.
Yeah. Okay. When he came, Ronald told that to me. I said, "Oh my God!" And it was, and I think he did.
Di ba sabi niya sa'yo, mag-presidente ka na lang? May time na pikon siya sa'yo. Sabi niya, Professor, ikaw na lang mag-presidente. Di ba napikon siya sa'yo?
Ganon. So, yun yung differences namin. Plus, mamasapan. But we need not go into that. Okay.
No, that's US-China. I want to talk about, kasi kanina Duterte, Marcos, religious groups, US-China. It's all about this Cold War.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, my stand had always been that we should try to seek an independent foreign policy.
In principle, we all agree.
Yeah. And my sense was that we have to be very careful that we leave that open, and that we are not accused of taking sides in this split in this conflict between China and the United States. This is why I opposed EDCA, because I felt that was basically putting our eggs into the pro-US side. This was back in 2014, 2015. And and I said that we're bringing the resolution to The Hague about China's positions there, in the West Philippine Sea, and we're undermining our own legal position that we're bringing to The Hague because we have entered into this military agreement with the United States. The second thing that I pointed out is that, in fact, the United States was not making any commitments to defend us on the West Philippine Sea at that point in time.
Yes, I agree. During Aquino's time.
And you know, you're making a military agreement with no real, and the reason you want it is because you want U.S. deterrence in the West Philippine Sea. And so that was basically what I was saying, is that it's the wrong move because it will compromise the legal position and that it gains you nothing. So the situation is that what I proposed then, and in fact I wrote about this in the New York Times,
I remember
is a four-step process of negotiations. Let's deal with the demilitarization issue, and then only at the last step do we then deal with the
I missed
territorial
that one.
issue. You know, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right.
Kasi this is the way that diplomacy should be
Can you
conducted.
give a snippet of that? Because I remember the other New York Times piece we had all together debating about the
That was-
Duterte. I missed this one. What was the fourth phase again? Sorry, I missed that. Sorry.
Well,
Okay, can we go
the
to the
first phase was that let's have an agreement whereby the Chinese would withdraw from their positions in the West Philippine Sea, and the United and the Philippines would withdraw from EDCA. So
Mutual disengagement. is-
mutual disengagement yung unang-una, and then bring ASEAN in a very strong way to push for the demilitarization of the whole area, no? And then isettle muna natin itong military issues, and then we end up with discussing the territorial issue. Kasi yun ang pinaka-sensitive. Pero unless you have confidence measures
Yeah.
that can bring you to the last point of let's discuss the territorial questions, it will be very difficult to achieve an agreement. Let me just say here that I think history has borne me out, because the U.S. said at during the and in fact Bongbong even went to in April of last year, Kishida and
Trilateral.
that trilateral
Javos,
meeting, that ironclad raw yung defense sa atin. But let me just say that, okay, when has the U.S. ever intervened in the fights or the conflicts between our Coast Guard and the Chinese Coast Guard? None. Zero. It was purely rhetorical. And because the U.S. Is not going to risk a war with China by taking the Philippine side in islands disputes. And we should have seen that from the very start, that mas malaki yung stake ng U.S. than getting involved. It has never, in all of the conflicts happening now, although the rhetoric of Biden was to say, ironclad, none, zilch, has happened there. So if you're not getting any kind of real support from your partner, and all your partner really is interested is to make you a bastion for, containing China, why enter into this agreement at this point in time?
So tama si Aquino he's even more opposition. Parang mas magaling pa yung argument mo kaysa TDS eh.
But I agree with Walden. During that moment, during that interregnum,
And then I'll bring in my own arguments again.
was not very active.
Thanks, well.
That
That
was-
was good. Okay, I forgot that.
But in relation to the Philippines, they were looking somewhere else. Even yung pivot to Asia ni Obama, wala siyang substance.
Wala.
It was just a slogan, no? Nung nangyari yung
Scarborough Show.
yung Scarborough Show, no? Ito, hindi ko kinikwento sa marami. I was sent to China. Para dahil ang tingin ni Pinoy, I understand socialism with a Chinese space. With Chinese
Ikaw yung show and line namin.
more than any other cabinet secretary.
Yeah.
No, ang Obertis Italianes daw yung pumunta. Pero Tago, pumunta ako doon. Nobody knew.
So, dalawang backdoor pala nangyari.
Nobody knew about that.
Double backdoor.
Some Politburo members.
Yeah.
I met Wang Yi. Pumunta ako Hong Kong. From Hong Kong, pumunta ako ng Beijing. Secretly. And I was, what's happening? No? But parang you're preparing to invade us. No? Yun ang sabi nila. Yun ang tanong ko sa kanila. No? Sabi nila, bottom line, hindi kami aalis sa South China Sea, sa Scarborough, sa Ayungin, etc. Bottom line, yan ang sinado nila. No? Dahil amin yan. Sabi ko, layo sa China eh. Layo sa China. Sabi nila, hindi, amin yan. No, yun yung pa nila. So, very close kasi ako sa Chinese ambassador, no? Ambassador Zhao.
Zhao pala.
Ambassador Zhao. No?
Na makulit, dialectical mag-isip. And actually, ano siya?
Medyo may rigor.
Manchu siya,
Ideological
diba?
at saka kwat. Yeah, galing siya sa Manchu. Minority.
siya-
Yung
hindi
grandfather niya was a Manchu general.
Exactly, yeah.
Tatay niya pinakulong during the Cultural Revolution.
And nag-aaral sa Washington, D.C. Yeah.
Tapos magaling siya mag-English, then nag-aral siya sa
George
US,
Washington
no,
University,
etc. So, naging close kami. So, we can agree to disagree.
Yes.
No? After nun, pumunta ako sa Vietnam para tanungin yung Vietnamese government. So, karanasan nila with engagement with China. Na-met ko yung kanilang defense chief, yung intelligence chief, at saka yung deputy foreign minister. No? Sabi nila, patuloy yung aming party-to-party dialogue, patuloy yung aming military-to-military dialogue. Pero sabi nila, bottom line, dapat meron kayong minimum capacity to deterrence.
Yeah.
Or else, China will walk all over you.
They would
They don't
stop
understand diplomacy. No, they don't understand diplomacy. Wala sa kanilang socialism with Chinese characters yun. No? Ang alam nila, 100 years of humiliation and they deserve to be the new superpower.
So in short, they also have hegemonic ambitions of their own. Let's spell it out,
Yung tinatawag ni Deng Xiaoping na social imperialism. No? Nung pumalit si Xi Jinping nung 2012, when I was there in China, it was a transition from Hu Jintao and Deng Xiaoping. Sinusundan ako ng dalawang grupo. Tinanong ko doon sa kakilala ko, sino yung mga sumusunod sa akin? Sabi niya, yung iba, mga intelligence agents ni Hu Jintao, yung isa ay intelligence agents ni Xi Jinping na transition yung moment na yon, no? Pero may mga criticism sila sa isa't isa. No, yung Hu Jintao at saka Xi Jinping. So, yun lang yung context noon, no, yung panahon na yon. At pinaliwanag ko nga sa kanila, this is the only Philippine president na ang una niyang state visit was China, not the US. No? Nakakita na ba kayo ng Philippine president na ang unang state visit is with China? Ikalawa, nag-defer kami sa inyo during the Nobel Peace Prize awardee doon sa artists. No, hindi kami dumalo. Ikatlo ay yung mga nahuli namin na mga triads, Taiwanese. Upon your request, pinadala namin sa mainland, not sa Taiwan. Galit na galit yung Taiwanese government. No, ang humingi nun was the Chinese government. Doon namin pinadala. Habi ko sa kanila, nakisa nyo na sa inyo nagde-defer. And for 8 months, hindi kinakausap ni Pinoy yung si Ambassador Thomas. No, dahil 8 months then nagalit siya. Dahil nagalit siya, no? Kinakailangan pa namin mag-organize ng isang jazz activity. Dahil jazz, paborito ni Pinoy yung jazz. Yung asawa ni Ambassador Thomas was the jazz singer. Para ma-break yung ice. Pero 8 months, hindi ta kinakausap. Dahil galit siya sa US noon panahon na yun. That was 2011. Kaya, from the start, hindi siya anti-China. Hindi rin siya necessarily pro-US. Galit na galit siya doon sa binigay sa aming barko ng US.
Na walang kwenta-kwenta na rotary. Vietnam era,
50 caliber, hindi pumuputok. So, hindi pumuputok. Kaya tama si Walden na hindi masyadong concern ng US, yung Pilipinas at the time. Pero, inuulit ko lang, I went to China to negotiate. no? Ang sabi ng China, no. Bottom line, amin ito. Mahaba pa yan, diplomacy, back and forth, no? 2014, nag-meeting kami, mukhang hindi na uubra ito.
Yeah.
Ayaw na talaga nila umalis. At, ang game changer, they were already building their bases inside our territory, yung artificial islands. No? Tinatayo na nila.
Exclusive zone.
Nag-rally pa sila while noon is Chinese embassy, remember, di ba? Kasama mo si Goles, etc. No? 2014, anong gagawin natin? Kailangan natin sabihin sa ating tao that we can defend ourselves, at the very least diplomatically, if not militarily. Doon nagkaroon ng decision sa UNCLOS, no? Na hindi miyembro ang US. Galit ang US sa UNCLOS dahil natalo sila sa UNCLOS doon sa kaso nila with Nicaragua. At ang kinuha naming lawyers are the same lawyers na tumalo sa US, no? At that time. Pero mahabang diskusyon yun, ha? The US had nothing to do with the UNCLOS case. I'm 100% sure.
I know you need to go kasi this is...
Nililinaw ko lang.
No, exactly. Ang point ko kasi dito, Walden,
At nung pumasok sa EDCA, at that time, no? It was about, yung EDCA was part of the Visiting Forces Agreement na naaprubahan ni Iraq. Hindi yan galing sa panahon ni Pinoy. Without defending Pinoy, doon yan sa panahon. Kaya nga, medyo shell yung EDCA ng panahon ni Pinoy. Wala dong mga arms, wala dong rockets, no? Wala dong... It's just
wala rin commitment si Obama because he didn't want to
sa
pick a fight.
Although, binabanata namin yan, kami as Akbayan, dahil ang mas gusto namin, yung Australian Visiting Forces Agreement. Na kung magkakaroon ng krimen, yung US troops, it will fall under our jurisdiction. Yun yung debate nun, no? Pero sinasabi ko lang, iba ito dun sa EDCA ngayon, no?
I want to go to the economic, kasi ganito, Walden, my fundamental problem is this. In theory, I would love us to be more like Vietnam, but Vietnam has 6 kilo class submarines na advanced Russians better than ones. They have advanced MiG fighters. They have 600,000 strong mobilized forces and half a century at least of combat. So,
And 3 wars with China.
exactly. So, my point, and 1,000 years of struggle. So, for me, the Vietnam parallel just doesn't work with the Philippines because we don't have the basic even capacity whatsoever, and we don't have the strategic culture of self-reliance and the sophistication of Vietnamese. So if there's no US backing whatsoever, China will just slap you around. Second, ASEAN. I was just in an ASEAN conference last month. Not a single even beep about West Philippine Sea. In fact, if anything, si Anwar Ibrahim, our good friend, the Filipinist, he said, I don't want to be like the Philippines. Troublemakers. We want to be good with China. Like, they're throwing us under the bus. Open, you all then. So, I'm immediately having 2 problems here. First, 2 steps mo pa lang. Parang, I don't think the Chinese will respect you if you have no deterrence whatsoever. Even the Vietnamese, they're being slapped around sometimes. Forget about it. And second, ASEAN is, I'm sorry, they're worse than useless. They even enable China. And then on your point about US not committing, and this could be a double-edged sword. In 2019, for the first time, Pompeo came here and said, any attack on your troops, vessels, will trigger. And Wallen, ito ba, last year, openly US said we are willing to join you in patrols to the Ayungin Shoal because meron tayong mutual defense. Pag binaril yung mga troops mo dyan, activated yan. So, facts have changed Walden. And for me, in principle, I agree with you. In fact, Mahathir, I interviewed him in 2019. He said almost exactly the same thing as you. Demilitarization. But for me, all of that presumes that China will agree to any kind of withdrawal. And I just don't see them doing that given their logic of imperial strategy. US is an imperialistic power. They have done horrible things. I've spent time in the Middle East. I know horrible things. But from the stories of my grandfather's Soviet occupation in the region in Caspian, I know there's also Eastern imperialism. And what I see with China today is also imperialism, in my opinion. So that's my consider right now. That we're too much focusing on the U.S. imperialism, but we're not paying attention to the Chinese imperialism.
Let me just.
Sorry, I just had to get that out.
Sure. Let me just raise a couple of points here. One is that I've been very clear from the very beginning, in all of my writings,
Right.
that the Chinese method of resolving the conflicts in the West Philippine Sea is fundamentally wrong.
Wrong, yeah.
That basically you do not just unilaterally assert your sovereignty, especially since it violates the United Nations
Convention
on the law of the seas. No, I think that's the first thing, and which is why I sponsored that amendment or not resolution changing the name of the
West
South China
Philippine Sea.
Sea, West Philippine Sea, as one of the diplomatic ways, but asserted, to tell the Chinese that, hey, you know, you're being quite nasty over here. The second thing
Right.
is I also understand that the reasons for China's moves in the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea has been a defensive strategy against the United States.
yeah,
you know,
sure.
because the one thing is that the South China Sea is practically an American lake. Okay, the Seventh Fleet.
Pacific is an American
Sure,
flag.
but the Seventh Fleet was there 10 months out of every year. And basically, what you have are warships that can go up to 12 miles off the coast of China. Okay? And we're
Which China doesn't agree with. And
Yeah.
they push back against.
Yeah. And you know, you've got to realize that the Shanghai, Guangdong, that whole area is where the industrial infrastructure of China lies, no?
Their economic engine.
Yeah, that's it. If they get wiped out in a 30-second or 1 minute or 2 minute attack by cruise missiles from the United States that can be fired from the different bases of the United States, it has hundreds of military installations, no? That cripples China, no? So I'm just trying to say that
Yeah, for sure. From the Chinese point of view.
Chinese point of view,
Yeah. It's a defensive.
therefore, they're not even focused on the resources. It's how do you construct emplacements within maritime formations where you can install land-to-air missiles that will allow you 30 seconds to 1 minute, you know,
breathing space.
breathing
Cushion,
space
cushion.
before you they're there. And if you look at what the Chinese have been putting up, whether it's the islands that they have or maritime formations, or
The Typhoon missile,
you know,
anti-cruise
or
missiles,
the you know, the mischief reef and that sort of thing. These are all anti-missile defenses, no?
to hit the Americans coming in.
And in a nuclear exchange, seconds matter, no? So I'm just trying to say that we also have to understand where they are coming from.
Of course. Ang sinasabi,
Grand
kaya
strategy yan.
yung sinasabi ko ng Walde ay, una,
Yeah.
hindi kailangan ng US ng EDCA for that military purpose. Nandun sila sa Japan, nandun sila sa Korea, nasa Guam sila, with modern missiles, especially dun sa kanilang mga satellites, hindi nila kailangan. Kalawa,
Singapore too. They actually
Kalawa ay
access, yeah.
nauna yung China bumili ba magtayo ng mga floating aircraft carriers, no, ng mga islands, no. Ako itutulong ko dun sa mga Typhoon missiles, may dito. Pero ang sinasabi ko lang, that came much later. No? It was center na una. Kaya ang sinasabi ko, yung Asia pivot ni Obama has no substance, no? Has no substance.
We all
Like,
agree, yeah.
yun yung kwan. Walang kwan nun, binigay sa ating World War II vessels, hindi man lang pumuputok yung baril. Kaya galit na galit si Pinoy noon. No? May panahon na yun. Kaya pumunta kami sa UNCLOS, no, at that time. It has nothing to do with the Americans. Yun, sigurado ko yun. Kami nagdedebate na at that time. At kinuha namin na mga abogado, yung tumalo sa US, abogado ng Nicaragua, doon sa kanilang dispute with the US sa UNCLOS, na inuulit ko, hindi miyembro ang US. At ang ginamit namin to win are basically old Chinese maps to show na even in the Chinese dynasties, they never included in West Philippine Seas. Kaya maganda yung ginawang resolution ni Walden. Yung describe yung ating EEZ as the West Philippine Sea because at that time, wala tayong mga maritime description ng ating territory. Nauna yun, ha?
At hindi updated yung baseline
Pero
natin.
sa talks ko sa kanila, malinaw sa kanila, ubos na yung kanilang aquatic mass sa Chinese coast.
Sa Fujian and
Sa kanila, our territory has the most number of natural gas and oil.
Untapped.
Inamin nila, just one area,
Recto bank, reed bank,
inamin nila that there are 100 billion tons ng oil in that small part of the West Philippine Sea.
Reed bank
Ibig sabihin,
area.
ayoko rin i-underestimate yung desire nila na kunin yung ating West Philippine Sea, yung natural resources nila. Aside dun sa gusto nilang wasakin yung containment strategy ng China. Sinasabi ko lang, yung containment strategy ng China, ng US, can be done without the Philippines. Siyempre nakatulong. I-ship mo lang dito tayo. But they've been doing that for decades with Taiwan, with Japan, and with Korea. Pero ang dalawang issues namin was the West Philippine Sea, na pinanggalingan ng resolution ni Walden at saka ng Akbayan. Tapos yung freedom of navigation sa high seas. Because 30% of global trade dun dumadaan. Yun yung concern namin. Taiwan, wala kaming masyadong issue dyan. It's a one-child
But
policy.
the Taiwan one matters. But the Taiwan one matters because one big issue on EDCA bases are mostly to the north. Taiwan is there. So are we okay if they invade Taiwan and take over Taiwan? They'll get our immediate name. Are we okay? Like, what do you want to happen if the Taiwan is invaded?
First of all, just a number of points. I agree with some of the points that Ronald raised, especially the importance of the diplomatic legal offensive that we had in The Hague.
Right.
And that's why I thought that was extremely important not to undermine that by entering into a military agreement with the
Geopolitical
United
game, yeah.
States. Kasi once you enter that, you really lost the moral high ground that you're basically saying, that's what we're after. And I could even predict what the Chinese were going to do. They're going to say they don't want this sort of thing, this whole Hague thing is fake and everything, because we had already entered into a military agreement with the United States.
But you're assuming that China would have respected it if we had not entered it.
Well,
I doubt that.
Yeah.
That's my problem. I doubt the Chinese would respect it either way.
no,
Damn if you do, damn if you don't.
basically, what I'm saying is that we really have to be very careful about our moves. And if there are times when asserting moral authority is the most important thing, instead of undermining that with a military agreement, that is what I would prefer. Okay? Especially if your partner has no intention anyway of defending you.
At that time.
Yeah, right. And as I said, laway lang naman yung kila Pompeo, and the thing is that have we ever seen the United States come to the aid of our Coast Guard vessels? None. Why? Because they think the Philippines is just small fry.
Pero that's a contradiction in terms. Gusto mo ba na sila ay defense line, yung ating Navy?
We don't want
Coast
that,
Guard,
Your argument is that U.S. is unreliable, but the Americans spend 100 billion on Ukraine, hundreds of billions on Israel in this country when they fight. So why shouldn't they fight for a treaty ally because if the Ukraine logic is to bog down Russia, they would love to bog down China over the Philippines.
No, my point
I'm just looking at their logic here.
I'm opposed to any sort of U.S. intervention. All I'm trying to say is that if our intention of entering EDCA 1 and EDCA 2 was to assure U.S. support for us in very concrete ways, then we were fooled, because they had never any intention of doing that. So my point is that in a situation like that, where your treaty ally is unreliable, and basically that that you cannot rely on the military equation, then I think you really have to push for gaining the high ground in terms of your moral authority.
But wait, you're China.
Well, my point is that this is a long-term kind of thing.
But
We're losing every day.
at the same time, nandun yung ating frontliners, nandun yung ating mga isda na
Every year,
tinataboy, di ba?
$600
We have to show
million,
something na
yeah.
meron tayong
We cannot
capacity.
wait another 30
Yeah, we
years.
have to show that the capacity to defend them. So actually, the first EDCA was, I agree, was just a shell. Dahil it's more symbolic than substantial. The present EDCA is more substantial kumpara nung sa EDCA 1. No? It was just part of the BFA na parang doon lang mapupunta yung mga troops na papapasok dito. No? Kami nga, ang posisyon namin, very critical dun sa EDCA 1. Ang sinasabi lang, the objective then was to show a minimum capacity sa ating mga tao
Minimum deterrence
that we
capacity.
can defend them.
But
Lalo na
Walden is
sinasabi
saying
sila.
the Americans are unreliable, so in short, you're full to go into a contract where it's open-ended on their side, but we are bogged down in that. So,
Sabi ko nga, that was just symbolic. It was not yung Typhoon missiles ngayon, the biggest military exercises ngayon. That never happened noong panahon namin. Hindi na nangyari.
so what about the idea that we
Mas ang highlight nga ng panahon namin was the West Philippine Sea name.
But Ronald, the point is Walden is saying is that even the symbolic vacuous EDCA just gave China more excuse to double down. So in short, self-defeating pa rin yun.
Lalo na kung wala yun. Ayun ang sinasabi namin, dahil diplomatically, we did almost everything eh. No, we did almost everything. Bending backwards, no? Sabi ko nga, I went twice. I was the only Filipino to speak at the Communist Party School sa Beijing. I was the only Filipino to speak at the Party Congress of the Communist Party. No? I was the only Filipino to attend their party congress. So
So what you're saying from your own direct interaction with relevant people, you just didn't see it working.
Sabi,
Those stuff,
manlinaw sa
deterrence.
kanila, this is ours, no? After lagi na sinasabi, 100 years of accumulation, this is now our time, no?
Moment in the sun.
Wala kami pakialam. Up no UNCLOS, kasama natin lahat ng claimant states. Two of them even promised to file the same case sa UNCLOS, Vietnam and Indonesia. Afterwards, nung nanalo na tayo, sinisingil ko sila. Sabi niya magka-file kayo ng case. Sabi nila sa akin, hindi, okay na, nanalo na kayo eh. So your victory is also our victory. No? Ganun yung sabi sa akin ng dalawang bansa na sumama sa UNCLOS, ha? Oo. Kaya,
But my point is, like, Walden, my challenge to you, and I want you to respond to that, my challenge, Walden, to you is, I do agree that sometimes, more than sometimes, we're not negotiating well. They have us on the cheap, if I can put it that way, right? I get it. Ang point ko lang dito is that, but we have to also agree, whatever is it, that China is having its own hegemonic imperialistic moment. So how do you realistically respond to that moment? Or you're disagreeing that China is having its own imperialistic hegemonic moment?
As I said, I am fairly critical of China in the way that it's behaving in the West Philippine Sea.
sila Walden ngayon, naglagay ng mahabang, measuring stick to measure the line, that line.
Let Walden respond.
Yeah.
But I guess my point here is that the measures we are taking, which is to continue to supply our forces over there, plus what a number of forces, including at Bayan, did in terms of civil society intervention in the area to go to our bases, our bases in those islands peacefully. I think, I fully support that.
Right.
But that's a very different thing. Those are things that, we can push for negotiations, etc. But that's a very different situation from relying on the Americans that have no intention of defending you, but actually just want to make you a springboard for their containment.
But can't we have a convergence of interests that they want containment, we want deterrence, and we can meet somewhere in the middle? Isn't that mutually exclusive? I mean,
Well,
like Ukraine, right? Ukraine wants to beat Russia. The Americans want to bog down the Russians, so they have a convergence of interest and they give $100 billion to Ukraine. That's how geopolitics works, right? Walden, Realpolitik.
the problem is we gave the whole store to the Americans
On the cheap, not
on the cheap without any return for it.
You would be okay if they give us a lot of weapons? Makulit ka, Ronald. That's like, I know.
Saying that,
I'm just pushing it this logical conclusion.
what I'm just saying is that I don't agree with that kind of move, but those who made it thought that way,
And
and
they
they
were
were
foolish.
fooled by
Okay. I get it.
this process. On the Taiwan question, that you raised, China's position has always been cross-strait economic integration leading to
Eventual,
unification.
except Hong Kong happened, and good luck with, like,
But
I think Walden that has changed.
Yeah, like Walden. These are not the same. I mean, like
The survival of Xi Jinping is now tied to the
2027
invasion
plan,
of Taiwan.
yeah.
But I don't think that China would be foolish enough.
He has a different read, so I wrong. We just have a different reason this. Yeah, okay.
But
Let's agree
the
to
one
disagree
that
on
kept
that,
on
yeah.
pushing that Taiwan was going to be invaded was really
Americans.
American defense establishment.
The
Because
US
there was no
commander.
basis
Yeah.
for me looking at it in all the different strategic views of China, that they would like to provoke American intervention by invading Taiwan. Okay, it was always cross-straits economic integration.
To be fair, Xi Jinping said we should be in a position to invade, not invade in
They already
2027.
have that, the economic integration. That's why the Taiwan is divided between the older generation.
Yeah, DPP at
the
saka
older,
Kuomintang also,
the state, that is already happening or has already happened. No, that's why you have more than 3 decades of strategic ambiguity, the Kissinger formula, di ba? Neither defending nor etc. Pero at this time, the survival of Xi Jinping, his relationship with the People's Liberation Army, is tied to Taiwan.
Yun ang different read natin, Walden. Yeah,
His
I think
survival-
our read is China even
But
much more
I
aggressive.
have to leave you
Yes, thank you.
late for my show.
Thank you so much.
There's
Thank you so-
gonna be
no, this is great. I know you're getting late. Just one last sentence, Rod, before you leave, and make sure you don't get my laptop. What is your initial sense of Trump 2.0? Is this a warring administration or things are still open?
I put all things constant. No, his appointments, his advisors. No, nothing much will change.
Continue.
But then again, you have a very unpredictable
Predictable.
transactional president
Right.
who gave TikTok 75 days extension. Even if a bipartisan body na Republican
And the Supreme Court
pinalis na sila. No? So, you have a very unpredictable. Sabi niya, I will defend Taiwan, but they will have to pay.
Faithful.
No? In a way, parang sa lito. Kaya,
You can link the last Walden last year. Thank you so much, Sir Ronald Diamas. That was great. Thank you. Just last point, I want to get also Walden on this because I felt Walden needed a bit more time. Walden, last one, I want to go back to the Trump thing. Thank you so much, Sir Ronald. Yeah. Walden, I really appreciate this because it looks like we have slightly different read of China. And that explains our divergence in terms of tactical responses. But I think we all agree we shouldn't be dependent on energy superpowers. And in fairness to you, since last time we talked about this issue, last December, ngayon kasi may appointments na eh. A couple of key appointments we're seeing in the Pentagon, in the State Department. These are people that are called so-called restrainers, isolationists, let's call them Jacksonians. Their idea essentially is U.S. should be for U.S. itself. We'll use force only when it serves us. Forget about allies. It's all about America first. Do you think that with Trump we'll see a radical departure from that kind of more bipartisan anti-China consensus that has been building up throughout the years in the U.S., or let's just call it the Cold Warrior mindset? You know U.S. better than all of us here in terms of the Cold War era, from Kissinger essentially to the new Kissinger guys and Kissingerians now. What is your rate of Trump? Do you think his new appointments and all is confirming your initial? Because parang yung sense mo last year was Trump is going to be so transactionalist and he might like just go and strike a deal with the Chinese, grand bargain. So we'll be even more foolish if we're involved, if you're invested in it. What's your rate? Yeah.
My sense here is that Trump is playing to his isolationist base.
Right.
And that's a very strong base who basically would like the U.S. to focus inward,
Yeah.
reindustrialize the U.S., basically put the focus on raising tariff wars, keeping immigrants out, and basically the whole idea of the isolationists, which I think Trump is instinctively, is to focus on the United States and the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah. Monroe Doctrine, essentially,
Yeah.
for the 21st century. Yeah.
And the second thing is that if you remember,
Right.
during the first Trump administration, he did a number of things that basically separated us from the expansive imperialism of the Democrats and the Republicans. To the
Bolton type of
right.
yeah.
And among them was he basically tore up the Trans-Pacific Partnership that every Republican and Democrat wanted. And then he went to, just to mention this,
Yeah.
he went and met Kim Jong-un in Korea, stepped over
Yeah.
to pat him on the back, and basically began a personal relationship that makes the South Koreans and the Japanese very worried about what that might mean. Because will he strike a deal of lowering the U.S. military presence in South Korea and Japan in return for some sort of deal with Kim Jong-un? So I guess, and then, at one point, Trump said he would not waste one American life for those rocks, which he meant the rocks in the South China Sea. So I think we have a non-internationalist president
Yeah.
of the U.S. at this point, where
Who doesn't believe in commitment?
he doesn't believe in commitments. He doesn't think that you have to defend
certain order,
defend freedom, every
rules based international order.
etc., etc. But is more interested in some kind of retrenchment that would allow the focus to the U.S. to rebuild. Now, but as Ronald says, he's very unpredictable. His instincts may be isolationist, but he's also quite unpredictable. So
He has ego also.
basically, I think what we're going to see is the U.S. will begin to have a kind of spheres of influence kind of approach, and that its main sphere of influence is the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And I think that with respect to the Middle East, I think it's just going to let the Israelis do what they want. Okay. Africa will be completely marginalized. South Asia, I'm not exactly sure, although he's close ideological to Mali.
And Europe, a lot of tension.
And Europe will just be left to fend for itself. And my sense is going to reach a deal with Putin. And so what does that mean for the Asia Pacific? I think this is, I don't think the Americans, especially the isolationists like Trump and his people, would really want to put much investment to the military containment of China. I think if he can reach a deal with Xi Jinping on Taiwan, on the West Philippines, etc., etc., that's what we should be looking at this point in time. But this open-ended commitment, the ironclad thing that Biden said, that doesn't. I don't think that Trump would make a statement or make a commitment like that. So we're in for a very tumultuous period where we can no longer assume that U.S. foreign policy will be what it was under Biden.
Or even Trump 1.0. Even Trump 1.0. Yeah.
So for me, I think I would look at this as an opportunity for the Philippines to really chart out an independent foreign policy.
And does it mean kind of like a multi-alignment of working more with Indians and the Turks and Koreans and different countries, but no really involvement in some sort of containment called? But aren't we slightly already doing that? We're working more with Indians. I was just with in India the other month. They're selling us weapon systems. We're working with
Sure, but we really don't have a
strategic culture of yourself.
We really don't have a coherent foreign policy aside from what the Marcos administration has done, which is to outsource our foreign policy, our defense policy to the United States. That's what they did under Biden.
Isn't that what the Philippines has been doing since Second World?
Yeah, but there were efforts in some of this administration. Even the first Marcos said the father,
even Ramos,
tried to sort of carve out a space. But then all that got lost under Marcos Jr., where everything is now outsourced. And I don't think even the DFA or our national defense is going to disagree with me that much of it has been outsourced to Washington. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that, of course, there are many challenges in the coming period, but I think we should also look at this as a chance to really formulate a really independent foreign policy. We work with diplomacy, we work with what we have, and we disengage from useless defense agreements like EDCA, to see, in fact, that we're entering a period where the big superpower, the United States, is now looking inward, and we are the least of its concerns. So my sense is there are dangers, but there are also opportunities in this coming period, and to work with our neighbors at this point in time, because they're also in a fluid, kind of situation. So
We're also in a bind, yeah.
yeah. So my sense is this is the era that we're entering at this point, and the important thing is let's take back the creation and the making of our foreign and defense policy into our hands and away from Washington, and then everything. Then we can really say that we are making moves that would be, we have to have a grand strategy.
Yes.
Except our grand strategy in the past has always been the United States. And then we have a president who has no concept of strategy at all, except to outsource everything to Washington. So this is, if your head of state really doesn't really know anything about where he's headed in terms of foreign policy because he doesn't have a strategy, then we're really in a very dangerous situation.
Oh, thank you for that intervention, Walter. I mean, for me, in principle, if we are going to move towards a more independent foreign policy, it's important you manage the transition.
Yeah.
Because as you decouple from Americans in theory, there's going to be that phase of vulnerability because you're going to be kind of on your own. So it's very important you kind of forward deploy the diversification.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when it comes to the Trump administration, I think there are going to be a lot of internal debates, including among isolationists, because some of them are prioritizers, like Elvis Kobe, who want to just focus on China, forget about Europe, and then they're like really isolationist restrainers, or say buyers and others, Demino, no, I said U.S. has to just focus on its own national interest and maybe a Monroe Doctrine for the 21st century. So a lot to discuss. So thank you so much, Walden, for that fantastic discussion. Our real tenured professor expert in the room. Like I had to go back to that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Walden.
The one thing I would say
Please.
is that we do have to be firm with China
Yes.
with respect to how we could be firm relying on our own resources.
Right.
And if we have to do it mainly on the legal and diplomatic front, let's do that. And this is the message that I was trying to say back then when I authored that resolution naming the West Philippines,
2011. Rename it to West Bay.
the South China Sea, the West Philippine Sea. Moves like that are very important when you're dealing with China. And China is a complex country.
Not a monolithic.
It's
I get it.
not monolithic. I think the way that it has basically behaved towards most of the global south has been positive. It has become the biggest development aid giver to so many countries.
He's not claiming their territory. He doesn't share a border with them. That's their problem. Right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, when it comes to
Tyranny from distance from tyranny.
yeah. But when it comes to borders, I think that's where the problem lies, because for the Chinese, a lot of these are colonial borders. And as
Vietnam's borders. I mean, like Gulf of Tonkin.
no, but China and Vietnam reached agreements.
That's what
Their
the
border-
Chinese say. The Vietnamese will tell you different.
Okay, but the point is, that we cannot just say that it is a hegemonic imperialism.
It's just a monolithic Eva. We cannot say that. But people always say you cannot also say the same thing with the U.S. because the U.S. also played a stabilizing role, not here or there, but maybe in Europe or some other regions of the world.
Well, I'm not quite sure about that.
Okay, so I think that's the difference, whereby you feel even if China has its hegemonic moment, it still has its benign and constructive and openness to change.
Yeah.
While the U.S. is already, we know that, right?
Yeah.
200 years of interventions around the way.
And
Okay.
we have to make sure that when things like the West Philippine Sea come, we are clear with China as to what our interests are. And let's not hide that. Even if we can just assert that diplomatically and not be able to assert it in real terms. No? But my point is that we have to have a foreign policy that really is realistic, but at the same time principled. And I think we now have an opportunity with a possible U.S.
Disillusionment or trench
Trump from East Asia to be able to enter an era where we can have a very creative foreign policy in terms of alliances, the relationship with China, the relationship with Japan, that sort of thing. That is the kind of thing that is opening up at this point in time.
Thank you, Professor Walden Bellew, for the fantastic discussion. Tuloy natin yan. I'm sure there's going to be a lot to discuss. I was thinking there's going to be sabog with Trump. It's going to be sabog with politics.
Yeah.
So lots to discuss. Thank you. So guys, that was volume 2 of Marcos and Marxism. Just to give you an idea of what are the kind of discussions we are interested in, and we're extremely thankful to Walden and Secretary Llamas also for lending their time. So stay tuned. Baka magka-volume 3 pa tayo, baka Zoom na kasi medyo mapagod na yata si Walden hosting us. But we'll try to continue this conversation. And to some of our other friends from the Progressive who said, bakit hindi kami iniimbita? Bakit silang dalawa lang? Don't worry, we're gonna raise something also separate with you. This is just the beginning of a series of, let's say, progressive take on international and domestic affairs that I feel we uniquely do on this podcast. No offense to mga sa kabilang chat. Ito na naman tayo. Thank you so much. God bless and talk to you soon.
Okay.